Alright, I'm gonna get back to doing these studies. I need to take it a little bit slow today, just because I had a bit of an asthma attack yesterday with moving in the new... My work's moving into a new building. There was like a lot more exposure to things I'm allergic to than I was expecting yesterday. So I got home and ended up feeling super sick, so I decided not to stream. I'm back today. I'm still feeling a little bit rough, even with all the meds I'm on, so... Here, we'll just do something simple. Just do another study here of another snaily boy. And I should pull up that just for the record. What we're doing is we're working on doing some studies for these creatures in the background here. Sort of weird, tentacly, snaily jellyfish combination monsters. Sort of traipsing through this sort of park with the gate there. Every time I see those gates, I feel like it doesn't matter which way I'm going towards them. I feel like there should be something spooky on the other side of them. So I figured, why not put some monsters there? Because if the monsters aren't in the picture, they should be. But anyway, I'm going to take it pretty easy on this one. Doing my usual stuff, and I'm just trying to figure out... I'm not trying to like learn the snail's anatomy, I'm just trying to learn how to paint the textures. So just for my own sanity, we're just going to super quickly mask out a selection of the rough shape of the snail. And we'll go in and sort of paint on top of that. Just to speed things up. The point is to get this done efficiently and learn how to paint snails, skins, and like where they connect to the shell a little bit. But not so much try to get perfect at painting snail anatomy. So the important part with like doing it just by eyeball is to learn the anatomy. We're not doing that, so we're not going to bother. I think that's just something important to like try to pick up when you're doing like studies for art or anything really, and that's to try to figure out the simplest way to go about getting things finished so that they're easy for, so that it's easy for you to learn what you need to learn and you're not spending a lot of time on like extraneous things that aren't super important. And then this time we're going to throw in a bit of a green background because I remember having a little bit of problems with, trying to get colors right, blending in and not being able to see them correctly on the background I was painting them on that earlier study. So, solve the problem right there. We'll get slightly fancy with this. Throw a bit of a gradient on it at least. Hey, thanks for following me. Hope you're having a wonderful night. So let's throw some of this. Make a brush a little bit smaller yet. Just trying to throw in some like relative values here just so it's easy to do the colors. I'm not trying to do the background on this one. So there's just a quick background. That way you can sort of see what I'm doing, if that makes sense. We'll hop in. Let's use a solid round brush to do like a first pass on color. And I'm not super interested in getting these colors exactly because we're going to be using our own final part. I'll be using my own in the final piece. I guess we'll too if you decide to follow along. But kind of thinking. One eraser, that's why I can't paint anything. That makes sense. Not another brush I want either. Go to here, my new one that's will scale the size but not the opacity. Something like that. I'm just doing this to chunk in some color. Once again, I'm not super worried about getting the shell right, but just for the sake of form, I want to paint it well. Sort of looking for an easy win today, since I've got enough other stuff to worry about. So that's part of why we're doing a study, but it's also productive, easy win, which is always a good thing. If you're doing something the easy way, just make sure you're at least getting something out of doing it the easy way. Even if it's just like relaxing and easing some tension, but if you can get more out of it than just that, it's always a good idea. Let's throw down some colors in this main body of the snail here real quick. I'm going to use a softer brush for this just because we've got a lot of softer transitions. And we'll throw it on a new layer. Just paint the snail in its, or paint the shell in its own layer. I'm trying to go with the darker colors, that way we can paint the light on top of it. Actually, I tried that last time. Let's try doing the light colors this time. And then painting the darker colors. At least in the areas where like the light colors are the dominant one, we'll paint the light colors in first. Just to see if that's a faster way. That'll be a faster way for us to go in and get our finished snail done. Or snail texture done when we're doing our final piece. That's part of why we're doing, at least why I do these, is to figure out the fastest way to paint something. Right? Because it's not just about not just about knowing how to do it, it's knowing how to do it efficiently that kind of matters. Because once you've got it figured out, you've done it a couple times, it's pretty easy to go back and do it again. As long as you do it frequently enough. Let's grab this one. I remember this brush being a pretty good one for... I certainly like this for like softish shapes with some hardish edges. We're not trying to get this exact, we're just trying to get the rough front of this down. So I'm just going to like draw on some outlines of roughly where all these little bumpy bits are. And we'll go in and paint the highlights and stuff for that later. And what I'm trying to do when I'm thinking about these colors is think about lighting. Like there's a lot of blue sky sitting on the sky, but there's going to be a lot of pink when we're painting our final scene just because the sky is so pink. So you won't have a lot of reflected blue light, we'll have a lot of reflected pinks and purples. And so I need to like be aware of what light is coming from what and why it is that color. It's sort of what I'm thinking when I'm picking colors in this. Once again, not trying to get it perfect, we're just trying to get it good enough. Like the top snail up here. When you're zoomed in, it's not exactly perfect. Nothing lines up exactly, but zoomed out, it looks right. And that's sort of what we're going for in these bigger pieces, is we're trying to figure out how to do it good enough to look good. Just because that's sort of like my painting style that I like to use is looks realistic from a distance, but when we get it close, you can actually see the brushwork. So I'm trying to like keep it loose enough to get that effect. And also, get it tight enough where from a distance it looks realistic. Or at first glance would be another way to think of it, is when you first see it, it looks great and perfect. It's sort of like Mary Poppins. It's practically perfect in every way. Then when you look a little bit closer, you realize that's not the case at all. There's a lot of like brush marks and like things left a little bit loose. Loosey-goosey. Just the way I like it. big defining shapes in these areas are the longer, darker areas along the back of those little bumps. More spaced out little things like that on this side. Grab some blue to neutralize that. Those were a little bit too yellow, I think. I think I'm starting to get what's making this work. Part of why you have so much difference there is because you've got the blues next to the yellows. And so the blues are showing like the slimy reflective part. And the yellows are showing like the shiny reflective part, like the lower areas where you're getting sky reflection, and then the yellow highlights are showing the brighter, more sunny sort of reflective area where you're getting like more direct sunlight. And so it's like things like that I don't think it would have occurred to me, not having done the studies when I was going to paint stuff, to think about like the directionality of the light on all these little bumps. But I think it's going to be important to like getting this piece looking correct even from a distance. Our shapes aren't quite big enough and smooth enough either. A little bit too fuzzy. You need to be using a smaller brush. Let's drop it down to an 8. Now I can like be a little bit more bold instead of like trying to like lighten up pressure to make some of the marks, because that like gives things a wishy-washy feel with these transparent brushes. So if you're doing that, you need to make sure that you're using lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, to make sure you're using like solid enough shapes and not doing like the fuzziness, I think that's what I was trying to get at, of like a soft overlaying soft brush strokes. So like we got overlaying soft brush strokes, let's just make a new layer here. You tend to get a lot of like in between stuff like that, and it's really hard to control if you're not doing it intentionally, and it sort of gets wishy-washy and muddy. Because if you're using like smaller things to try to build up colors next to each other, it's a lot easier to keep them like well defined, and then you go back over it with those transparent strokes, sort of blend them together, rather than trying to like get the blend correct from the start, because that's how things tend to get muddy. And you can do it both ways, but if you're trying to get like hard edges next to each other, I find painting two hard solid objects next to each other first is the way to go, and then blend it together, or to go like full wishy-washy. So like sort of what I'm going to be doing down here, which is you've got the full wishy-washy after the shell, right, where you've got the shell shadow that sort of comes out, right? So we start out with the soft as possible, and then we go in Actually, those are relatively straight lines. Like there's a little bit of wobble here and there. They're relatively straight, and they're basically just going around. As we get further away on these like rounded curvy things, these lines look a little bit closer together, a little bit more dense. There we go. So as you're going around a curve, sort of like a sphere, well, we need that layer, demo layer back. So if you have like a circle, right, you want to show it sphere, the lines are always closer together and the more distant. You're doing a really bad job. The lines are sort of closer together just because they're on edge, basically, right? They're more on a plane like that, sort of facing off into the distance rather than going straight across like that, if that makes sense. So they're just sort of, you basically rotated them on the plane, that's why they're getting closer together. Sort of like you do see on like the lines on a globe. Not the best drawing, but hopefully you get the point. So anyway, I'm seeing a lot of like those kind of lines going around the sides of this thing. And you got another one of those lines that sort of flows out, fades out around there-ish, right? So that's where we need our transparency, is we're going to be blending in a little bit as we go forward, just because the lighting is different up there. And then we sort of got these curve backs. So these shapes that sort of like curve down from that. I think over here we're getting like really brighter highlighty areas. So I should just go grab that color. There we go. Ooh, picked up the background color. So when I'm painting the actual monster, I'm going to have to keep in mind those transitions from like darker areas with less lighting and stuff to the areas with more lighting. Anyway, let's do the next step of this, sort of So like I'm just trying to capture that sort of like divot that's on all the bottoms of these. Let's just sort of mark it in a quick way, just because it's a relatively small detail that I don't think many people are going to pick up on. So, like in the final piece, I don't want to be spending a ton of time painting it. I want to get it like just good enough where it's going to show the form right and look like what it's supposed to. You know, it won't make people, you know, I don't know how to describe this. Sometimes when you have like problems in your paintings, it sort of like jumps out as immediately wrong. And other times people have to think about it a while before they figure out and like really try to figure out what feels off about it. If you can, you kind of want to avoid the instant, uh-oh, something's not right. Sorts of mistakes, just because those will like really detract from your painting, just because anyone's going to pick up on those. It's far more helpful just to go in and we might need another line down the middle there. I think even in the upper area, got a little bit of this going on. We've sort of got I'm painting those on the wrong side. So they're going to be on the upward facing side of all these little bumps. But I'm probably going to call it tonight before I finish this study. Just because I'm already feeling like a little asthma-tired and headachy. And I probably just need to like take some ibuprofen and go to bed here pretty soon. Kind of want to get this color. I might as well merge these all together. I sort of merged the wrong thing down earlier. Probably going a little bit too small of a detail on this one. Versity. That's probably why it's taken so long. I should really have upped the scale of these little bumpy things, I think. Even though I think it's pretty similar to what we have in the reference. I think I'm going to need to use like larger bumpy scales in the final painting, just for the sake of time. It's always something to keep in mind as you're doing these sort of like learn how to paint, teach yourself how to paint something kind of things. Is how's it going to work in like the final piece? Is what I'm going to do going to be like sustainable in the long term? Does it really make sense to be doing things this way? I hate to say it, but I think this is going to be it for me tonight. I'm a little bit worn out, but I think we sort of captured that snaily part of it, which is what I was going for. I was going into a little bit too much detail, but as soon as I started doing the bigger, chunkier bits, I think it worked out a little bit better. So I think what I was doing the first night was more optimal, even if it's a little bit fuzzier. When we zoom in, I can always just spend a little bit more time cleaning those up in the final painting though, if I need to. But I kind of figured that's as zoomed in as we're going to need to be, maybe there. So we're going to be like really zoomed in on the monster when we're painting it, so I think using this more as my guide for how to paint the final one. And I also like some of the shapes in there a little bit better. So I'll just use that going forward, I think. But I still would like to do a couple more studies on some of these cooler like jellyfish things real quick. I don't think I need to spend a lot of time working on those, but should spend a little bit. Anyway, that's for another day. We'll just be doing this stuff for tomorrow. Let's pause Dropbox so I don't kill the stream right at the very end. But anyway, thanks for coming tonight, and I will hopefully be back tomorrow.